Coming off the back of a well-received original which released in January 2010, Darksiders 2 presents War's brother, Death, who sets out in an alternate realm to clear his brother's name and return humanity to how it was before War came along and royally screwed things up. Without giving too much away, it's a perfect excuse to play as one of the enigmatic and well-known Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse and tear stuff up. The gameplay remains largely unchanged, bar the fact that Death is a bit more of a nimble character compared to his brother. They share distinct similarities in their no-nonsense, overconfident approach, but there's something deeply compelling playing as the Grim Reaper himself. Players once again are faced with a massive, sprawling world to explore, but it seems that Vigil Games took on board criticisms of the first game and applied them here in full effect. There's several hub areas to explore, which allow Death to interact with the large and distinctive inhabitants, undertaking quests and using them as tools to offload or purchase new gear. The mission structure has become far more open-ended, to the point where players are encouraged to use the fast travel options and teleport back to base to stock up. The open-ended nature of the gameplay works really well and provides a far more engaging land to explore. Combat is perhaps one of the major elements of the gameplay, and therefore an integral part of the experience. Death is equally as deathly as his brother, and makes light work of foes. Once again, players are faced with sub-boss enemies, and then the larger-than-life monstrosities that require multiple approaches to take down effectively. The combat is fast, fluid, and ultimately very satisfying. There's quite a range of moves to learn, but players can get by with the basics if they simply want to button mash their way through the game. There's a new loot system which aids the exploration, as enemies and crates etc. contain random drops of gear, which can be equipped via menu or on the fly. This adds a fair bit of personality and purpose to exploring the game world, as players don different armour, primary and secondary weapons. A big part of the Darksiders experience is the use of lateral and multi-layered puzzles. These return in abundance and will leave Death somewhat puzzled at times. Luckily, there's a hint system with Death's winged companion who often points out the correct path without giving too much away. It's hard to say whether the puzzles are more complex than before, but they do begin to offer quite a challenge as players progress through the story. This is something more casual gamers need to consider here, as there are several head-scratching moments that might require looking up an online hint or two. Darksiders 2 runs fairly smoothly, but does suffer from an unsteady frame rate at times. Also, there seems to be a lack of response with some of the critical buttons, such as jumping and letting go whilst hanging. These can get annoying and result in messing up a dashing run, but generally are minor quibbles to what is a very well-polished game in terms of gameplay. The graphics are bold and distinctive, offering the sort of imagery players expect from a demon-filled alternate realm. Each location has been well crafted to feel differently themed, and although some of the interiors sport similar looks, there are subtle differences. The game is ambitious with its sense of scale, but with the frame rate not being as smooth as it could be, lets it down somewhat. Although that said, the unsteady frame rate isn't a game breaker. The audio provides an exhilarating assault on the senses, with sweeping and emotive tracks from Jesper Kid, giving the audio a very contemporary feel. The voice acting, once again, is top quality, with Death and the numerous secondary characters really putting in excellent performances. The audio cannot be faulted really, to the point where even the ambient sounds give the game a real sense of perspective and colour, which complement the graphics. Darksiders 2 comes in as a much bigger game world to fully explore, and while some gamers might be able to breeze through the main story in under 10 hours once they know what to do, for the majority of first-time players there are simply many hours of engrossing gameplay to mess around with. It's certainly good value for money if that's a concern. As for replay value, it's likely there will be elements missed on a first playthrough, and as the game offers a levelling system, makes replay all the more worthwhile. Players are also able to gift friends with rare loot and items they have found, which adds to the random element of acquiring loot and is a neat touch. Darksiders 2 presents itself as a sizable second helping to an already fulsome main course. Death is a much more charismatic and likeable character than War, and therefore brings a bit more to the table. There is a grand sense of constant and rewarding discovery to be had, as the story provides the complete tour of what's on offer. Aside from the few niggles in terms of slow button responses and the less than perfect frame rate in some areas, the game succeeds in besting the original and coming out on top fairly unhindered. Fans of third-person action role-playing games will love this, although some casual players might struggle with some of the more taxing puzzle elements. Darksiders 2 offers a gritty, well-realised and colourful moody world to roam and be the master of all life. In its own right, the game comes highly recommended for fans of the original and newcomers looking to no longer stare death in the face, rather become him. Now how cool is that? Darksiders 2 scores an impressive 9 out of 10.